Tyler Matthews walked through Oakwood Park, his footsteps falling in rhythm with the beat pulsing through his earbuds. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the worn path. He adjusted his backpack, heavy with textbooks and dreams of the future. At 16, Tyler was a bundle of contradictions, confident yet unsure, ambitious yet hesitant. His mind wandered to the college applications waiting at home, the weight of expectations from his mother, his teachers, and himself. The music in his ears, a mix of hip-hop and jazz, provided a soundtrack to his musings. As he rounded a bend in the path, something caught his eye. On a park bench, partially hidden by fallen leaves, lay a wallet. It wasn't just any wallet. Even from a distance, Tyler could see it was expensive, the kind of accessory that spoke of wealth and status. He paused, glancing around. The park was relatively empty at this hour, most people still at work or school. Tyler approached the bench, his heart rate quickening slightly. He picked up the wallet, feeling the smooth leather under his fingers. For a moment, he hesitated. The weight of the wallet suggested it contained more than just cards and ID. Tyler thought of his mother, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. He thought of the new shoes he needed for track, the laptop that was on its last legs. With a deep breath, Tyler opened the wallet. His eyes widened at the sight of several $100 bills. Credit cards with metallic finishes glinted in the sunlight. But it was the driver's license that caught his attention. The name Harold Grayson was printed in bold letters, accompanied by a photo of a stern-looking older man. Tyler recognized the name. Harold Grayson was a prominent figure in their city, a real estate magnate whose company logo adorned half the construction sites downtown. His face was often in the local news, usually accompanied by headlines about new developments or charity galas. A war of emotions raged within Tyler. The money in this wallet could solve so many problems. It was more cash than he'd ever held in his hands. But as quickly as the thought came, he pushed it away. His mother's voice echoed in his head, reminding him of the values she'd instilled in him since childhood. "Honesty isn't just the best policy, Tyler," she'd often say. "It's the only policy." Decision made, Tyler pulled out his phone and searched for Harold Grayson's address. It wasn't hard to find. The Grayson estate was well known in the city, a sprawling mansion in the most affluent neighborhood. As Tyler set off towards the Grayson residence, his mind raced with possibilities. Maybe Mr. Grayson would be so grateful he'd offer a reward. Maybe this could lead to a job opportunity, a chance to network with someone influential. At the very least, Tyler thought, it was the right thing to do. The walk to the Grayson estate took nearly an hour, leading Tyler from the familiar streets of his neighborhood to areas he rarely visited. The houses grew larger, the cars more expensive. By the time he reached the iron gates of the Grayson mansion, Tyler felt distinctly out of place in his worn jeans and faded t-shirt. Standing before the intercom, wallet clutched in his hand, Tyler took a deep breath. He was doing the right thing, he reminded himself. Whatever happened next, he could hold his head high, knowing he'd made the honest choice. With a mixture of nervousness and determination, Tyler pressed the intercom button. As he waited for a response, he couldn't help but feel that this moment, this simple act of returning a lost wallet, might somehow change the course of his life. Little did Tyler know just how prophetic that feeling would prove to be. The intercom crackled to life, startling Tyler. A gruff voice demanded, "State your business." Tyler cleared his throat. "I'm here to see Mr. Grayson. I found his wallet and wanted to return it." There was a pause, then a buzz as the gate slowly swung open. Tyler walked up the long driveway, gravel crunching under his feet. The mansion loomed before him, a sprawling structure of stone and glass that seemed to touch the sky. As he approached the front door, Tyler's confidence wavered. The opulence surrounding him was overwhelming. Manicured gardens, a fountain bubbling nearby, luxury cars parked in the circular driveway. He felt small, out of place, like a speck of dust on an immaculate floor. Before he could knock, the door swung open. Harold Grayson stood there, an imposing figure in a tailored suit. His eyes, sharp and calculating, took in Tyler's appearance with a quick sweep. "You have my wallet?" Grayson's voice was clipped, impatient. Tyler nodded, holding out the leather accessory. "Yes, sir. I found it in Oakwood Park and—" Grayson snatched the wallet from Tyler's hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. He rifled through its contents, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing second. "How did you know where I live?" Grayson's tone had shifted from impatient to suspicious. Tyler blinked, taken aback by the question. I looked up your address online, sir. I wanted to return it as soon as possible." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to believe that? A boy like you just happened to find my wallet and decided to play Good Samaritan?" The words stung Tyler. He felt his face grow hot, a mix of embarrassment and indignation rising in his chest. "I'm just trying to do the right thing, Mr. Grayson." Grayson scoffed, his gaze hardening. "The right thing? Do you know how many times I've heard that line? People are always looking for handouts, trying to scam their way into my good graces." Tyler took a step back, shocked by the hostility. "No, sir. That's not what this is about. I swear, I just found your wallet and wanted to return it." But Grayson wasn't listening. His face had twisted into a mask of distrust and contempt. "I suppose you'll be wanting a reward now, won't you? Is that what this is about?" "No, I don't want anything," Tyler protested, his voice rising slightly. "I was just trying to help." Grayson's laugh was cold, devoid of humor. "Help? Let me tell you something, boy. I didn't get where I am by trusting every street kid with a sob story. For all I know, you could have stolen this wallet yourself." Tyler felt as if he'd been slapped. The injustice of the accusation burned in his throat. "I'm not a thief," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm an honest person. My mom taught me—" "Your mom?" Grayson interrupted. "And where is she? Why isn't she here instead of sending her son to do her dirty work?" Tyler's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He wanted to shout, to defend himself and his mother, but the words wouldn't come. The situation was spiraling out of control, and he didn't know how to stop it. Grayson reached into his pocket and pulled out a cell phone. "I think we're done here. I'm calling the police. They can sort this out." Panic flared in Tyler's chest. "The police? But I didn't do anything wrong." "That's for them to decide," Grayson said coldly, already dialing. "I suggest you stay right where you are. Running will only make you look guilty." Tyler stood frozen on the doorstep, his mind racing. How had this happened? How had his act of kindness turned into such a nightmare? He thought of his mother, of how worried she would be if the police showed up at their door. He thought of his future, of college applications and dreams that suddenly seemed in jeopardy. As Grayson spoke into the phone, describing Tyler as a suspicious youth who had somehow obtained his wallet, Tyler felt a surge of anger and helplessness. He wanted to run, to escape this unjust situation, but he knew that would only make things worse. So he stood there, on the threshold of luxury, feeling more alone and misunderstood than he ever had in his life. The sun was setting behind him, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. As the light faded, so did Tyler's hope that honesty and good intentions were enough to navigate the complexities of a world divided by prejudice and mistrust. In that moment, as he waited for the police to arrive, Tyler realized that returning a wallet wasn't just about honesty anymore. It had become a test of his character, his resilience, and his ability to stand up for what was right in the face of injustice. Tyler's mind raced as he stood on Grayson's doorstep, the weight of the accusation crushing down on him. He tried to speak, to explain himself once more, but Grayson's cold stare silenced him. The words caught in his throat, a lump of frustration and fear. "Mr. Grayson, please," Tyler finally managed, his voice strained. "This is all a misunderstanding. I swear I'm telling the truth." Grayson's lip curled in disdain. "Save it for the police, boy. I've heard every excuse in the book." The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Tyler's hands trembled slightly, and he shoved them into his pockets to hide it. He'd never felt so small, so powerless. The sprawling mansion behind Grayson seemed to loom over him, a symbol of the vast divide between their worlds. As they waited in tense silence for the police to arrive, Tyler's mind drifted to his mother, Linda. He imagined her face when she found out about this, the worry that would crease her brow, the disappointment in her eyes. Not disappointment in him, he knew, but in a world that would treat her son this way. Miles away, in a bustling diner on the other side of town, Linda's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and fished it out, expecting to see a message from Tyler about dinner. Instead, she saw a notification from his school. Frowning, she opened the message. As she read, her face paled, and her hand flew to her mouth. The school was informing her that Tyler hadn't shown up for his last 2 classes of the day. Linda's mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. It wasn't like Tyler to skip school. He was a good kid, responsible, always letting her know where he was. Fear gripped her heart as she thought of all the things that could have happened to him. She quickly called Tyler's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Her anxiety spiked. With shaking hands, she dialed his best friend, Jasmine, but she hadn't seen him since lunch. Linda's boss noticed her distress and came over. "Everything okay, Linda?" She shook her head, fighting back tears. "It's Tyler. He's missing. I need to go find him." Her boss nodded understandingly. "Go. We'll cover for you." Linda barely heard the words of thanks she mumbled as she untied her apron and rushed out the door. As she climbed into her old, beat-up car, memories flooded her mind. Memories of warnings she'd given Tyler over the years, of the extra precautions she'd always taken to keep him safe. She remembered the first time she'd had to explain to him why some people might treat him differently, because of the color of his skin. The confusion in his young eyes had broken her heart. She'd tried to strike a balance between preparing him for the harsh realities of the world and preserving his innocence, his faith in humanity. As she drove, scanning the streets for any sign of her son, Linda's mind raced through all the stories she'd heard, all the news reports she'd seen. Young black men disappearing, encounters with law enforcement gone wrong, lives changed in an instant due to misunderstandings and prejudice. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. She'd always taught Tyler to be honest, to do the right thing. But she'd also taught him to be careful, to be aware of how the world might perceive him. Had those lessons failed? Had she failed to protect him? Linda's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from one of Tyler's classmates. Her heart nearly stopped as she read it at a red light. The message mentioned something about Tyler going to return a wallet to someone named Grayson. Grayson. The name rang a bell. Linda's eyes widened as she remembered Harold Grayson, the real estate tycoon. She'd seen his face on billboards around town, heard his name on local news. With a new sense of urgency, Linda turned her car towards the wealthy part of town. She knew the general area where the Graysons lived, though she'd never had reason to go there before. As she drove, Linda's fear mixed with a growing sense of anger. She knew all too well how people like Grayson often viewed people like her and Tyler. The assumptions they made, the prejudices they held. Linda's jaw set with determination. She'd faced discrimination before, had stood up against injustice. She'd be damned if she'd let anyone, no matter how rich or powerful, treat her son unfairly. As the houses grew larger and the streets more manicured, Linda's resolve strengthened. She didn't know exactly what she would find when she reached the Grayson estate, but she knew one thing for certain. She would fight for her son with every ounce of strength she possessed. The sun was setting as Linda finally turned onto the street where the Graysons lived. In the distance, she could see flashing lights. Her heart raced as she pressed down on the accelerator. Whatever was happening, she would face it head-on. For Tyler, for herself, and for every parent who had ever feared for their child in a world that didn't always see their worth. Linda Matthews was on a mission, driven by a mother's love and a fierce determination to see justice done. The confrontation that awaited her would not only change her life and Tyler's, but would spark a movement that would ripple through their community and beyond. As the tension mounted at the Grayson estate, another figure entered the unfolding drama. Jasmine Carter, Tyler's best friend since elementary school, was walking home from her after-school job at the local library when she spotted a familiar figure standing on the doorstep of the imposing mansion. Jasmine squinted, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. What was Tyler doing in this neighborhood? Curiosity piqued, she crossed the street, keeping to the shadows of the well-manicured hedges that lined the sidewalk. As she drew closer, the scene before her became clearer. Tyler stood rigid, his body language screaming discomfort. Opposite him, a tall man in an expensive suit loomed in the doorway, his face a mask of suspicion and disdain. Jasmine's heart raced as she realized she was witnessing something she wasn't meant to see. Without thinking, Jasmine pulled out her phone and began recording. Her hands shook slightly as she zoomed in, capturing Tyler's distressed expression and the man's accusatory stance. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but the body language told a story of its own. As she watched, the man, who she now recognized as Harold Grayson from his frequent appearances in local media, pulled out his own phone. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat as she heard him say, loud enough to carry across the lawn, "I'm calling the police." Jasmine's mind raced. She knew Tyler. He was honest to a fault, always looking out for others. Whatever was happening here, she was certain he wasn't in the wrong. With trembling fingers, she stopped the recording and opened her social media app. "Witnessing potential racial profiling in real time," she typed, her thumbs flying over the keyboard. "My friend Tyler, a kind and honest person, appears to be in trouble for trying to do the right thing. This is happening now at the Grayson estate." She hesitated for a split second before hitting post, attaching the video she'd just recorded. As soon as it uploaded, her phone began to buzz with notifications. Friends, classmates, and soon strangers were reacting to the post, sharing it, commenting with messages of outrage and support. Jasmine's heart pounded as she watched the view count climb. 100 views, 500, 1,000. The video was spreading like wildfire through their community and beyond. She hadn't expected this level of response, but a part of her felt a spark of hope. Maybe this attention could help Tyler. As the video continued to gain traction, Jasmine noticed a shift in the comments. People were no longer just expressing shock or support. They were taking action. Local community leaders were being tagged. Calls were being made to local news stations. The hashtag #JusticeForTyler was trending in their area. Meanwhile, oblivious to the digital storm brewing around him, Grayson attempted to control the narrative. He paced on his front porch, one hand holding his phone to his ear as he spoke urgently to someone. His lawyer, perhaps, or a PR representative. "This is ridiculous," Grayson snapped into the phone. "I'm the victim here. This boy shows up with my wallet, claiming he found it. It's obviously a scam." But even as he spoke, doubt began to creep into Grayson's mind. The boy hadn't run when confronted. He hadn't changed his story. And now, as Grayson glanced at his own social media feed, he saw the video spreading, along with comments questioning his actions. Grayson felt a bead of sweat form on his brow. He was used to controlling situations, to having the upper hand. But this was spiraling beyond his grasp. The court of public opinion was in session, and it wasn't ruling in his favor. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second, Jasmine made a decision. She stepped out from her hiding place and walked boldly up the driveway. Tyler's eyes widened in recognition and relief as he saw her approach. "I'm here as a witness," Jasmine announced, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I have video evidence of this entire interaction." Grayson's face paled as he realized the situation had just become much more complicated. The narrative he'd constructed was crumbling before his eyes. In that moment, as the first police car pulled up to the curb, the power dynamics shifted. Tyler, who had felt so small and helpless just minutes before, stood a little straighter. Jasmine's presence and the knowledge of the support pouring in online bolstered his resolve. The community was watching now. The truth would come out. What had started as a simple act of honesty had transformed into something much bigger, a catalyst for exposure, a challenge to deep-seated prejudices, and a call for justice that would resonate far beyond the gates of the Grayson estate. As the police officers stepped out of their vehicle, they were walking into a situation far more complex than the simple trespassing call they'd received. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the bounds of justice, community, and the power of truth in the age of social media. The police cruiser's lights cast an eerie blue glow across the manicured lawn of the Grayson estate. Two officers stepped out, their faces a mix of confusion and wariness, as they took in the scene before them. A wealthy homeowner, two teenagers, and a palpable tension hanging in the air. Officer Davis, a veteran of the force, approached first. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his hand resting casually on his belt. Before Grayson could speak, Tyler stepped forward, his heart pounding, but his voice steady. "Sir, I found Mr. Grayson's wallet in the park and came to return it, but he's accusing me of stealing it." Grayson scoffed. "That's ridiculous. Why would I accuse you if you were really returning it? Officer, this boy is clearly trying to pull some kind of scam." Officer Davis held up a hand, silencing both of them. His partner, Officer Rodriguez, a younger man with sharp eyes, was already scanning the area, noting Jasmine standing off to the side with her phone out. "Let's take this one step at a time," Officer Davis said. "Son, can you show me some ID?" Tyler nodded, reaching slowly into his pocket to pull out his school ID. As he handed it over, he couldn't help but notice how the officer's hand tensed slightly, ready to reach for his weapon at any sudden movement. The realization sent a chill down Tyler's spine. As Officer Davis examined the ID, Tyler heard a commotion from down the street. He turned to see a familiar car speeding towards them, tires screeching as it came to an abrupt halt at the curb. Linda Matthews burst out of the driver's seat, her eyes wild with fear and determination. "Tyler!" she cried out, rushing towards her son. Officer Rodriguez moved to intercept her. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay back." But Linda was unstoppable. She pushed past the officer, placing herself between Tyler and the authorities. "What's going on here? Why are you questioning my son?" The situation, already tense, now threatened to boil over. Grayson, seeing Linda's arrival as an opportunity, pointed an accusatory finger. "Officers, this must be a setup. They're working together." Linda's eyes flashed with anger. "Working together? My son was trying to do the right thing by returning your wallet. How dare you accuse him of anything else?" Officer Davis stepped between them, his voice firm. "Everyone needs to calm down. We're going to sort this out, but I need cooperation from all parties." As the adults argued, Tyler felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Jasmine, her face a mix of worry and determination. "Tyler," she whispered, "I've been recording everything. It's all over social media now. People are watching." Tyler's eyes widened. He looked past the immediate scene to notice a small crowd gathering at the edge of Grayson's property. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion and the police presence, were watching intently. Some had their phones out, recording the unfolding drama. The weight of the moment hit Tyler. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't even just about the wallet. This had become something bigger, a public display of the prejudices and tensions that simmered beneath the surface of their community. Officer Rodriguez noticed the gathering crowd and spoke into his radio, requesting backup. The situation was growing beyond their control. Linda, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, addressed the officers directly. "My son has never been in trouble a day in his life. He's an honors student, volunteers at the community center. He found a wallet and tried to do the right thing, and this is how he's treated?" Her words carried across the lawn, reaching the ears of the onlookers. Murmurs of support began to ripple through the crowd. Grayson, realizing he was losing control of the narrative, attempted to backpedal. "Now, wait a minute. I never said he definitely stole anything. I was just being cautious. You can't be too careful these days." But his words rang hollow in the face of the community's growing support for Tyler and Linda. The officers exchanged glances, aware that they were standing at the epicenter of a situation that was rapidly evolving from a simple dispute into a flashpoint for community tensions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the scene, the Grayson estate had become an impromptu stage for a drama that would force their city to confront uncomfortable truths about race, privilege, and justice. Tyler stood tall, drawing strength from his mother's presence and the support of his community. He may have walked onto this property feeling small and alone, but now he stood at the center of a movement, a catalyst for change that was only beginning to unfold. The night was far from over, and as more police cars arrived on the scene, lights flashing and sirens wailing, it was clear that the simple act of returning a lost wallet had set in motion events that would reverberate far beyond this moment, challenging long-held beliefs and demanding answers to questions their community had long avoided facing. The arrival of additional police units transformed the Grayson estate into a chaotic scene. Blue and red lights flashed across manicured hedges, illuminating the growing crowd of onlookers. The air buzzed with tension and the murmur of voices. Officer Davis, trying to regain control of the situation, raised his voice. "All right, everyone needs to calm down. We're going to get statements from all parties involved." As he spoke, a chant began to rise from the gathered crowd. "Tyler! Tyler! Tyler!" The sound swelled, a wave of support washing over the scene. Tyler felt a surge of emotion, fear, pride, and a newfound sense of purpose. He straightened his back, looking directly at Officer Davis. "Sir, I'd like to give my statement now, if that's okay." Officer Rodriguez nodded, pulling out a notepad. "Go ahead, son. Start from the beginning." Tyler took a deep breath, his voice steady as he recounted the events. "I found Mr. Grayson's wallet in Oakwood Park after school. I looked up his address online and came here to return it. That's when Mr. Grayson accused me of stealing and called the police." As Tyler spoke, Linda stood beside him, a hand on his shoulder. Her presence was both comforting and emboldening. Jasmine, still recording, moved closer to capture every word. Grayson, watching the scene unfold, felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. The narrative he'd constructed was crumbling in the face of Tyler's calm recounting. He attempted to interject, "Now wait a minute, that's not exactly..." "Mr. Grayson," Officer Davis cut him off. "You'll have your chance to speak. Right now, we're listening to the young man's statement." The rebuke was polite, but firm. Grayson fell silent, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes and camera phones trained on him. As Tyler finished his account, a voice called out from the crowd, "Let the boy go! He didn't do anything wrong!" Others joined in, the chorus of support growing louder. Officer Davis turned to his partner. "We need to disperse this crowd. It's becoming a safety issue." But before they could act, a news van pulled up, its satellite dish extending skyward. A reporter and cameraman quickly set up, preparing to broadcast live. The situation had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a simple misunderstanding had transformed into a community stand against injustice, broadcast for the world to see. Grayson, realizing the potential damage to his reputation, attempted to salvage the situation. "Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can resolve this without any further..." But his words were drowned out by the crowd. "No more lies," someone shouted. "We're watching you, Grayson." The police officers exchanged worried glances. The situation was balancing on a knife's edge. One wrong move could tip it into chaos. In this charged atmosphere, Tyler made a decision. He stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. To everyone's surprise, the chanting slowly died down. "I came here today to do the right thing," Tyler began, his voice carrying across the lawn. "I found a wallet and wanted to return it. I didn't expect any of this, but now that we're here, I think we need to talk about why this happened." The crowd listened intently as Tyler continued. "Mr. Grayson saw me and made assumptions. Assumptions based on nothing but the color of my skin. That's not right, and it's not fair, but it's a reality many of us face every day." Linda, tears in her eyes, beamed with pride at her son's words. Jasmine, still recording, zoomed in on Tyler's face, capturing the moment for posterity. Even the police officers seemed moved by Tyler's impromptu speech. Officer Rodriguez nodded slowly, a look of understanding crossing his face. Grayson, for his part, stood frozen on his doorstep. The weight of his actions, the consequences of his prejudice, seemed to finally sink in. His face, once twisted with suspicion, now showed the first signs of shame. As Tyler finished speaking, a moment of profound silence fell over the scene. It was broken by a slow, building applause that started in the crowd and spread until it encompassed everyone present. In that moment, on the manicured lawn of a mansion, surrounded by flashing lights and rolling cameras, a movement was born. Tyler's act of honesty, met with suspicion and prejudice, had become a catalyst for change. The night was far from over. Statements still needed to be taken, decisions made about how to proceed. But one thing was clear: nothing would be the same after this. The community had found its voice, united in the face of injustice. As the applause died down, Tyler turned to face Grayson. Their eyes met across the divide of the porch steps. In that gaze lay the possibility of understanding, of growth, of change. The path forward would not be easy, but it had been illuminated by the courage of a young man who refused to be silenced. The events of this night would echo far beyond the Grayson estate, sparking conversations, challenging assumptions, and inspiring others to stand up for what's right. And it all began with a lost wallet and a simple act of honesty. The applause faded, leaving a charged silence in its wake. Officer Davis cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the tension. "All right, we still need to get to the bottom of this. Mr. Grayson, it's your turn to give a statement." All eyes turned to Harold Grayson. The once imposing figure now seemed diminished, his confident stance replaced by a nervous shuffle. He cleared his throat, his gaze darting between Tyler, the officers, and the crowd. I may have overreacted," Grayson began, his voice lacking its earlier bravado. "When I saw the boy, I mean Tyler, at my door with my wallet, I jumped to conclusions. I've been the victim of theft before, and I guess I let my paranoia get the better of me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Grayson's admission, while far from a full apology, was more than many had expected. Officer Rodriguez pressed further. "So you're saying you had no concrete reason to suspect Tyler of theft?" Grayson's shoulders sagged. "No, I didn't. He told me he found the wallet and I didn't believe him. I should have." As Grayson spoke, a subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere. The anger that had been directed at him began to soften, replaced by a complex mix of emotions: disappointment, frustration, but also a glimmer of hope for understanding. Linda stepped forward, her voice firm but not unkind. "Mr. Grayson, do you understand why your actions were so hurtful? Why they speak to a larger problem in our community?" Grayson met her gaze, and for the first time that evening, he seemed to truly see the people standing before him. "I'm beginning to," he said quietly. "I made assumptions based on prejudices I didn't even realize I had. I see now how wrong that was." Tyler, standing tall beside his mother, addressed Grayson directly. "All I wanted was to do the right thing, to be seen for who I am, not what I look like." Grayson nodded slowly, the weight of his actions visibly settling on his shoulders. "I understand that now, Tyler, and I'm truly sorry for how I treated you." The sincerity in Grayson's voice was palpable. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. A crack in the wall of misunderstanding that had divided their community for so long. Officer Davis, sensing the shift in mood, saw an opportunity. "Given Mr. Grayson's statement, I don't see any reason to pursue this matter further from a legal standpoint, unless Tyler and his mother wish to press charges." All eyes turned to Tyler and Linda. They exchanged a look, years of shared experiences and unspoken understanding passing between them in an instant. Linda spoke first. "We don't want to press charges. What we want is change. Real, lasting change in how people see and treat each other in this community." Tyler nodded in agreement. "This isn't just about me and Mr. Grayson. It's about all of us. We need to do better, be better." A voice called out from the crowd. "What can we do? How do we make this right?" The question hung in the air, a challenge and an opportunity. Grayson, after a moment's hesitation, stepped down from his porch. He approached Tyler and Linda, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'd like to help," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent lawn. "I've lived in this community for years, but I realize now I've been blind to the experiences of many of my neighbors. If you're willing, I'd like to work with you to address these issues." The offer was unexpected, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Jasmine, who had been quietly recording the entire exchange, stepped forward. "We could start a community dialogue," she suggested. "Use this experience as a starting point to address the bigger issues of racial profiling and prejudice in our town." The idea took hold quickly. Soon, others from the crowd were chiming in with suggestions: town hall meetings, youth programs, police sensitivity training. What had begun as a confrontation was transforming into a collaborative effort for change. As the discussion continued, the police officers exchanged glances. This was far from the typical resolution to a call, but it was clear that something important was happening. Officer Rodriguez addressed the group. "We're here to serve and protect all members of this community. If there are ways we can improve, we want to be part of that conversation." The night air, once thick with tension, now buzzed with possibility. The crowd that had gathered in anger now stood united in purpose. Grayson, Tyler, Linda, and Jasmine stood at the center of it all, unlikely allies in a newfound cause. As the impromptu community meeting continued, the news cameras rolled, capturing a moment of transformation. The story of a lost wallet had become something much bigger. A catalyst for change, a moment of reckoning, and the beginning of a journey toward understanding and equality. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of prejudice and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in a single night. But on the lawn of the Grayson estate, under the glow of police lights and camera flashes, a small but significant step had been taken. A community had come together, faced an uncomfortable truth, and chosen to move forward together. As the impromptu community meeting on Grayson's lawn continued, The initial shock of the evening's events began to settle into a focused determination. The news cameras, which had initially rushed to capture a potential scandal, now found themselves documenting the birth of a grassroots movement. Tyler, still at the center of attention, felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He cleared his throat, drawing the scattered conversations to a halt. "I think we need to organize this," he said, his voice stronger and more confident than he felt. "If we really want to make a change, we need a plan." Jasmine, her journalistic instincts kicking in, stepped forward. "We should form a committee," she suggested. "Get representatives from different parts of the community involved." The crowd murmured in agreement. Linda, her earlier fear now replaced by fierce pride in her son, added, "And we need to make sure this isn't just talk. We need concrete actions, goals we can work towards." As the discussion evolved, Officer Davis watched with a mix of admiration and concern. He approached Tyler and spoke in a low voice. "Son, I admire what you're doing here. But remember, you're still young. This is a big responsibility." Tyler nodded, understanding the officer's concern. "I know, sir, but I can't just walk away from this. It's too important." Meanwhile, Grayson, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward again. "I want to help," he said, his voice carrying a note of genuine remorse. "I've made mistakes, but I want to make things right. I have resources, connections. If you'll have me, I'd like to be part of this committee." A tense silence fell over the gathering. Many in the crowd still viewed Grayson with suspicion, their trust not so easily won back. Tyler looked at the man who, just hours ago, had accused him of theft. He saw not the arrogant, prejudiced figure from earlier, but a human being grappling with his own flaws and trying to do better. "I think," Tyler said slowly, "that if we're really going to change things, we need everyone involved, even those who've made mistakes, especially those who've made mistakes and want to do better." His words seemed to release a collective breath held by the crowd. Nods of agreement rippled through the gathering. Jasmine, ever practical, pulled out her phone. "Let's start a group chat," she said. "We can use it to organize meetings, share ideas. Who wants to be involved?" Hands shot up across the lawn. People began to exchange contact information, impromptu discussions breaking out about potential projects and initiatives. As the energy of the crowd surged, Linda noticed Tyler swaying slightly on his feet. The adrenaline of the evening was wearing off, and exhaustion was setting in. She put an arm around her son's shoulders. "You've done enough for tonight," she said softly. "Let's go home." Tyler started to protest, but a yawn cut him off mid-sentence. He nodded, suddenly aware of how tired he was. As they prepared to leave, Grayson approached them once more. "Tyler," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I can't undo what I did earlier. But I want you to know, I see you now. Really see you. And I'm sorry it took all this for that to happen." Tyler met Grayson's gaze. "Thank you, Mr. Grayson," he said. "I hope we can work together to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." As Tyler and Linda walked to their car, the crowd parted respectfully. Voices called out thanks and encouragement. Jasmine gave Tyler a quick hug before turning back to continue organizing. Officer Davis approached one last time. "You did good tonight, Tyler," he said. "But remember, you've got support. Don't try to carry this all on your own." Tyler nodded, grateful for the advice. As he climbed into the passenger seat of his mother's car, he looked back at the scene on Grayson's lawn. The flashing lights of the police cars, the news vans with their extended antennas, the diverse group of people huddled in discussion. It all seemed surreal. Linda started the car, the familiar rumble of the engine a comforting sound after the chaos of the evening. As they pulled away from the curb, she reached over and squeezed Tyler's hand. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Tyler squeezed back, too tired for words. As they drove through the quiet streets towards home, he felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The simple act of returning a wallet had turned into something he could never have imagined. As the Grayson estate disappeared in the rearview mirror, Tyler knew that this was just the beginning. The real work, the hard work of changing hearts and minds, lay ahead. But for the first time, he felt hopeful. He had seen his community come together, had witnessed the power of speaking up and standing firm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities. For now, though, Tyler closed his eyes, letting the gentle motion of the car and his mother's presence lull him into a well-earned rest. The lost wallet had been returned, but something much more valuable had been found. A path forward, a chance for change, and a community united in purpose. The following morning, Tyler awoke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly. Bleary-eyed, he reached for it, only to be overwhelmed by a flood of notifications. The events of the previous night had gone viral. Local news stations were running the story on repeat. Social media was ablaze with hashtags like Justice for Tyler and Grayson Gate, and his inbox was filled with messages from friends, strangers, and even a few journalists seeking interviews. Downstairs, Linda was already fielding calls. Her voice drifted up to Tyler's room, a mix of firm refusals and cautious agreements. "No, he's not available for comment right now." "Yes, we're aware of the situation. A press conference? We'll have to get back to you on that." Tyler made his way downstairs, still trying to process the whirlwind of attention. Linda looked up as he entered the kitchen, her face a mix of concern and pride. "How are you feeling, honey?" "Overwhelmed," Tyler admitted, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. "I didn't expect all of this." Linda nodded, understanding in her eyes. "It's a lot to take in, but remember, you don't have to face this alone." As if on cue, Tyler's phone buzzed with a message from Jasmine. "Community meeting at the rec center at 2 p.m. You in?" Before Tyler could respond, another notification popped up. It was a public statement from Harold Grayson, released through his company's social media channels. "I want to address the events that occurred at my home last night. My actions towards Tyler Matthews were inexcusable. They were rooted in prejudice and fear, and I am deeply sorry for the pain and injustice I caused. I am committed to working with Tyler, his family, and our entire community to address the systemic issues that led to this incident. I know that words are not enough, and I am prepared to take concrete actions to make amends and foster real change." Tyler read the statement aloud to his mother, his voice a mix of surprise and cautious optimism. Linda's brow furrowed. "It's a start," she said, "but you're right to be cautious. Real change takes more than just words." As the morning wore on, Tyler and Linda found themselves at the center of a media storm. News vans parked outside their modest home, reporters clamoring for statements. The police had to set up a perimeter to give the family some privacy. Amidst the chaos, Tyler received a call from an unexpected source. "Tyler, this is Officer Davis from last night. I hope you don't mind me calling." "No, sir," Tyler replied, curious about the reason for the call. "I wanted to let you know that your actions last night, well, they've sparked some important conversations within the department. We're looking at implementing new training programs, revising our protocols. Your courage is making a real difference." Tyler felt a surge of emotion at the officer's words. It was one thing to hope for change, another to see it beginning to take shape. As the hour of the community meeting approached, Tyler and Linda prepared to face the public. They had decided to attend, feeling it was important to be part of the conversation they had helped start. Arriving at the rec center, they found the parking lot packed. Inside, the gymnasium was filled to capacity. A diverse crowd of faces all turned expectantly towards the door as they entered. Jasmine rushed over, clipboard in hand. "Tyler, we've got representatives from the mayor's office, the police department, local businesses, schools. Everyone wants to be involved." At the front of the room, A makeshift stage had been set up. Tyler could see Grayson there, looking uncomfortable but determined. Their eyes met across the room, and Grayson gave a small, respectful nod. As Tyler made his way to the stage, the crowd parted, voices calling out encouragement and thanks. He felt the weight of their expectations, their hope for change resting on his young shoulders. Taking his place at the microphone, Tyler looked out at the sea of faces. He saw anger, hope, skepticism, and determination reflected back at him. In that moment, he realized that this was about more than just one incident, one wallet, one misunderstanding. It was about a community at a crossroads, facing its demons and choosing a path forward. Tyler took a deep breath, steadying himself. He wasn't a polished speaker, had never imagined himself in this position. But as he began to speak, his voice grew stronger, fueled by the conviction that had brought him to Grayson's door in the first place. Yesterday, I tried to return a lost wallet. Today, we're here to return something much more valuable: our sense of community, our commitment to justice, our belief in the possibility of change. As Tyler continued, the room hung on his every word. In that gymnasium, on that unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, something remarkable was taking shape. A movement born of an act of honesty was growing into a force for real, lasting change. The lost wallet had been found, but in the process, a community had found something far more precious: its voice, its conscience, and its power to shape a better future. As Tyler's speech came to an end, the gymnasium erupted in applause. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of determination and hope that seemed to electrify the air. But amidst the excitement, a voice cut through the noise, sharp and unexpected. "This is all very inspiring," the voice said, "but what about the real issue here?" All heads turned to see a middle-aged man standing near the back of the room. He was well-dressed, with an air of authority about him. "I'm Richard Lambert, from the district attorney's office," he announced, "and I think we're all overlooking something crucial." A hush fell over the crowd as Lambert made his way to the front. Tyler felt a knot form in his stomach, unsure of what was coming next. "Mr. Grayson," Lambert said, turning to face the real estate magnate, "your wallet was reported stolen 3 days ago, yet you claim Tyler here found it yesterday. Can you explain this discrepancy?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to Grayson, whose face had gone pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Tyler's mind raced. The stolen wallet report. It explained Grayson's initial suspicion, but it also raised new questions. Questions that threatened to undermine the progress they'd made. Lambert continued, his voice cutting through the tension. "We've been investigating a series of high-profile thefts in the area. Mr. Grayson's wallet was one of the items reported stolen, but now it seems there's more to this story." Grayson finally found his voice. I can explain," he stammered. "The wallet wasn't actually stolen. I lost it, but I reported it stolen for the insurance claim. I never expected anyone to actually find it and return it." The revelation hit the room like a thunderbolt. Murmurs of shock and disbelief rippled through the crowd. Tyler felt as if the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Everything they'd discussed, the progress they'd made, it was all based on a lie. Linda stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "So you lied to the police, Mr. Grayson? And then accused my son of theft when he tried to do the right thing?" Grayson's shoulders slumped. "Yes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." The gymnasium erupted into chaos. People were shouting, demanding answers, calling for Grayson to be arrested. The unity that had been building just moments ago seemed to be crumbling. In the midst of the uproar, Tyler found himself at a crossroads. The truth had come out, but at what cost? The movement they'd started, the conversations about racial profiling and community unity, would it all be overshadowed by this new revelation? Taking a deep breath, Tyler stepped back up to the microphone. His voice, though shaky at first, gained strength as he spoke. "Listen, everyone. Please, listen." Gradually, the noise died down. All eyes turned to Tyler once more. "What Mr. Grayson did was wrong," Tyler began. "He lied, and his actions hurt not just me, but our entire community. But isn't this exactly why we're here? To address the deeper issues that lead to mistrust, to prejudice, to people making bad decisions out of fear or greed." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "We can't let this setback derail us. If anything, it shows us how much work we still have to do. Not just about race, but about honesty, integrity, and how we treat each other as human beings." Tyler turned to Grayson. "Mr. Grayson, you have a lot to answer for. But you also have an opportunity here. An opportunity to make real amends, to be truly transparent, and to help us build the kind of community we all want to live in." Then, addressing the crowd once more, Tyler continued, "This isn't the end of our movement. It's a challenge, yes, but also a chance to show what we're really made of. Are we going to let one man's mistake define us? Or are we going to use this as a catalyst for even greater change?" As Tyler's words sank in, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The anger and disappointment were still there, but alongside them, a renewed sense of purpose began to emerge. Jasmine, who had been furiously taking notes, spoke up. "Tyler's right. We can use this. Mr. Grayson's actions and their consequences can be a case study for our community. We can examine how privilege, fear, and prejudice intersect to create these situations." Officer Davis stepped forward. "And from a law enforcement perspective, this gives us even more reason to reevaluate our procedures. How we handle reports, how we approach situations. There's a lot we can learn from this." As the conversation evolved, taking on new dimensions and tackling even deeper issues, Tyler felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The path forward was more complicated now, but also more real. They were no longer dealing with a simple misunderstanding, but with the complex, messy reality of human nature and societal structures. The lost wallet had been found, but in the process, they had uncovered so much more. Layers of truth and deception, challenges and opportunities, all intertwined in the fabric of their community. As the meeting continued late into the evening, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning of a long, difficult, but ultimately hopeful journey towards true understanding and change.